I'm Michael Reich. I'm a visual artist living in Phoenix, originally here by way of New York. I do photography, I do sculpture, and I do pop art. I'm heavily influenced by kind of the 80s new wave movement of New York City. Most of the East Coast artists, Robert Longo, Keith Haring, Robert Mapplethorpe especially, that sort of pop art period where art was really more of a commodity and a commercial rather than a social or an aesthetic, basically. I like a very flat, very primary color, very direct kind of style. So it kind of pulls influences from that and from advertising. I like it to be an attention grabber. I like it to be, as one of my critics put it, I like it to be a retro pop style that looks good on the wall, as it were. I think it's a common story among artists that when you get done with a finished piece of work, no matter how good it is, no matter how excellent it is, no matter how happy you are with it, that you still go, this doesn't match this beautiful vision I had in my head, this singing choir of perfectness and completion. A lot of the times for me in painting, the art does take an arc. I will always start with a hard, fast idea, and I'll have it in my head, and I'll go, okay, this is what it's going to do. But sometimes as you're working, sometimes you notice that maybe that line isn't right, or that color doesn't work, or that affect of it really draws attention away from what the piece is, what you're trying to do with it. So I think there's always a little bit of a learning curve and a design curve every time you do something. As a rule, I'm happy with most things when they get to the end process, but I think a lot of that depends on what I'm doing and how much heart I have in it. I had a teacher back in college who had basically told me, he said, the tap dancing wedding cakes are the ones that would allow you to be Picasso. So I think there has to be kind of a balance between what you do to make money and what you do to be an artist. And I think those can exchange, rather well. I go, if you're comfortable with yourself. Because when you come out of school, and you're very young and you're very raw, you have that, I'm an artist, my work is genius, everybody should love what I do, my mom loves what I do, my friends love what I do, so ergo, I must be amazing. And that's not always the case. So when you get out into the real world and you get to do that business, especially dealing with galleries or corporations or clients, you find that there is a severe disconnect to what you learn in art school or you read about in the journals or in the books as to what the reality of the situation is. Art, in most cases, is a want. It's not a need. People, when they put art in their homes, you have two very distinct buyers. You have people who buy art to decorate the house to go with a couch. And you have other people that don't care what the art does in the house. They just like the art so much that they'll put that cubist painting in a house that's modern ranch because that art speaks to them. If you're lucky as an artist, you find the second client more than you find the first client. One of the best lessons I've learned, is you be nice on your way up. Because at some point as an artist, you plateau. You're never going to get any higher. You're never going to get any hotter. And one of two things happens. You either coast the rest of your career or you start falling. I go, you backtrack. And I go, which is kind of hard. And I go, but the thing is, as you fall, those hands and those people that you passed can either set you very nice and gently on the concrete at the bottom, or they can drag you down at light speed and make sure you land face first. So I would think if I had to go back and talk to my younger self about what not to do, it'd be like, you're talented, but you're never as good as you think you are. You're never as important as you think you are. And it's a lot more important to be known for good character than for good work. Because in the end, that's really the only thing that you're going to have. I go, is what people think of you and your reputation. And the best reputation is he's solid, he's professional, and he'll bend over backwards. If he likes you, he'll bend over backwards to help you. He's open to whatever you need. Your best competition is always good for you. They keep you sharp. They keep you running forward. They keep you wanting to work and be better. And if you look at other people as beneath you or not worthy of your time. I go, or, they're like, well, I don't like the kind of work they do, so them. That comes back and bites you. And I learned a lot of that in my early 20s. And generally, by the time I hit 30, thank God, I had finally gotten my head out of the paint jar, as it were, and kind of went, okay, this is important to be known for doing this and having this kind of approach. The best quote I can give on that was John Lennon had a great quote, which I've always liked, which is, being honest won't make you a lot of friends, but it'll get you the right ones. When I was younger, I personally I would hang out with other artists, but I generally didn't interact with them on a collaborative sense because I was trying to blaze my own path. And I think one of the aspects of collaboration that the perception can be sometimes if you have a greater artist hanging with a lesser artist is that the lesser artist is coattailing up or trying to come up. I'm always flattered when people want to co-work with me, especially if it's someone I like, especially if it's somebody better, because it's kind of nice being recognized by your peers, especially being recognized by your peers. These days, I would say that if I have somebody who is in that same media and wants to do a co-project, I kind of approach it, I think, the way most musicians do. You just kind of sit down, get some wings, get some barbecue, get some beer, and you just blast. And you come up with that middle ground where both of you are comfortable giving up his side, her side, whatever, and your side. I think that one of the downsides of collaboration, if you do it too much, is I think it sometimes dilutes your tool a little bit. Because when you are working with somebody, you have to be sharp, but you also have to give a lot of ground. Because it's not all about you. And I think artists who continually do that, I'm not saying it's a disservice, but I think you have to have your own thing. It's good to work with this person, but also make sure you're maintaining your own garden over there to make sure that you're staying sharp and that you're not being diluted out. And I would like to actually see more group events, more art salons, more where the tribe gets together and just sits down and spreads the bowl. I go, even if there's something you can learn from everybody. I don't care if you do mosaics. I don't care if you do basket weaving. I go, there is something in every artistic discipline that as a painter or a photographer or a sculptor or as a writer that you can pull from. There's always going to be a concept or an idea that you can look at and go, I can use that. I can work that. And I wouldn't have known about that if I hadn't sat down and just chatted with this person. Being an artist is a very weird job. And it's... to use an analogy I used a couple of years ago, which seems to be fairly appropriate, it's a little bit like being a porn star. Okay? There's very high risk, low reward, and your parents are probably too embarrassed to tell other people what you do for a living. So you have to kind of look at it from this aspect of, if I'm going to collaborate, I also have to open myself up to the fact that I'm probably going to get a lot more criticism. Because maybe the artist I'm working with, maybe he's not up to par, or maybe I'm not up to par. Maybe I drag him down by jumping onto the ship. And the collaborative process is a lot like a marriage. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know if the end result's going to be great or if, within 3 months you're going to want to move out on each other. Well, the perception I think that people have of artists is that they either think a lot of us are kooky or offbeat or eccentric, which to a degree is a fairly accurate thing up to a point, because creative people are not wired like the cubicle people, as I like to say. I'll go, you see the world differently, you approach the world differently. And one of the big things about that is when I see people talk about going to that desk job and wearing the tie and, oh, I'm so happy to be in a felt room and I don't interact with my fellow humans and da-da-da. I look at those people and I go, okay, if you're happy, that's great. That's lovely. I'm glad you found that zen. But a person like me, or persons like me, in that sentence, in that death sentence of life, atrophy and die and sink to the bottom, because there's nothing. And I may annoy some people with this. There's nothing creative about having your destiny controlled by somebody else, and there's nothing fulfilling about living your life in a soulless fashion. That actually came around because, speaking of death, in July of '09, I'm diabetic. I had an allergic reaction to a tooth being pulled, and I suffered what's known as ketoacidosis. And ketoacidosis is where your blood sugar just decides to take the throttle and bury it into the floorboards. And I was admitted into the hospital with a blood sugar of 1485. Generally, mid 900s is where you usually die, or you come back out of it a fruit salad. And when I came out, and it was about a 5-week period of recovery, just physically, and it probably took me better than a year mentally to kind of get back to where I was. There had been things that had been bothering me about the Phoenix art scene for a while. I've been working in it since '91. And these were the things you would talk about over beers and the things you would talk about in groups, but it wasn't made public. It's the elephant in the room that nobody ever acknowledges. And I sort of came out of that experience going, okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm done being polite and nice and sweet and diplomatic and tactful. I go about these issues. So I started writing. And basically, in the beginning, it was a diary entry. It was like, I think I had 7 people who were reading it. It was like me and 6 of my friends. And then I had a run-in, a series of run-ins with reporters from the Phoenix New Times, which even to this day has possibly some of the worst arts coverage in the state. I go, it's not coherent, it's badly written. And the reason being is because you have, once again, interns and, people right out of college writing about experiences that they don't really bother to want to get in depth about. And you have an editor who just says, well, content is much better than context. So the writing has kind of taken on a life of its own over the last couple of years, and it's developed. My average piece is about 3,500 words. So I kind of use the term blogvella now, because it's not a blog and it's not a novel, but it's kind of somewhere in between. And I generally tend to tackle issues that affect the Phoenix art scene. I'd say about 80% of the content is about that. And depending on who you talk to, who's a reader of it, I'm either, really nice guy and I'm doing a good thing, or I'm just the most arrogant bastard you've ever met. But what I found funny is I always tell people, you'll get mad at me for tone, and you'll get mad at me for being sarcastic or harsh, but it's very rare you'll come up and tell me I'm wrong. I think Phoenix is long overdue for a cleaning, metaphorically and literally, where I think we have to look at our scene, and we have to look at the best way to make it financially stable, the best way to make it aesthetically pleasing to people from outside the state, to make Phoenix an art center the way LA is and New York is. And I think that's possible. Chicago. I think that's very possible because we do have the talent here. The one thing I think that is a major impediment, I go for here is a good marketing campaign, good business practice, and also artists who have to get over that mindset that being an artist means that you have to live a certain lifestyle and you have to suffer and it has to be uncomfortable. You can be successful and still be the same artist you were 20 years ago. You don't compromise your principles or sell your soul just because somebody hands you a check. That's a personal choice to do so. I think artists have to embrace the fact that it's time, if they actually love to do what they do, that they should get paid to do what they would do for free. Years ago, I was very lucky that I had an interaction with somebody who looked at me and flat out said, well, if you would do this for free and people like it and they want to put it in their houses and they want to put it in their offices and they want to use it in ad campaigns, then why the hell don't you want to get paid for it? I cannot stress anything more than that if you want to be successful as an artist, if you want to carry on, if you want to do this for the rest of your life till they plant you, that you have to be smart in all 3 of those areas, or at least competent. In business, you have to know what you're doing in order to maximize the best benefit for you and the best benefit for whoever you're dealing with, be it a professional ad campaign, be it a gallery, be it just being a lone artist independently selling to patrons. Educate yourself, I go, on interpersonal relationships. Learn how to work with people. Learn how to be interactive with people. Learn how to be open, to get new age, to be open to the universe and what it's trying to tell you. Learn to read signs. Learn to listen more than you talk. And third, I would have to say, as far as educating in your craft, learn everything about your craft. Get as much esoteric and bizarre information as you can. These days with social media, these days with the internet platform, which was something they didn't have when I started, this is invaluable to an artist because now you don't necessarily need a gallery. But here's the thing. You're one of 10 billion websites on the planet. So to stand out, you have to market across a broad spectrum. You have to have interpersonal relationships, because even in the era of the web, even in somebody buying your work in Australia, you still have to make that connection with somebody. As I've often said to artists working into galleries, I said, you be that person who becomes invaluable. That person who's the go-to guy. This artist flaked on us. We need 8 pieces. Call Ted. Ted will bring the show. Ted will bring more than we need. You want to be that person. Opinions and critiques are entirely different. I think that's where artists kind of meld the two. An opinion is, that sucks. A critique is, I don't like that because this arm looks weird, or that eyeball is low, or that color that's a critique. And I always tell people, I go, critiques are good. Critiques are part of growth. And I always say that if everybody loves what you do, there is something really wrong, because we know that's not true. There's one person in that group, and they always go, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, hurt my feelings? Lay me down. Run a bus of feelings over me. Let me know. Because if this is horrible, I don't want to put that out there and have that, backlash of negativity come at me. Unprepared.